From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. Presidential nominees in Venezuela will have 48 more hours to register their candidacy at the National Electoral Council, or CNE. Including President Nicolas Maduro, 6 candidates have presented their nominations. According to the CNE, this decision was made to guarantee the political rights of Venezuelans. Venezuelan politician Henri Falcon was the last candidate to register. After officially throwing his name in the hat, Falcon was expelled from the opposition coalition. But he says he's running despite a call from the opposition to boycott the electoral process. He wants to work independently of the opposition coalition to find a new national unity.
That's the government that we want for Venezuela, a government of national unity that includes and doesn't exclude.
President Nicolas Maduro presented his candidacy before joining a rally of supporters. The president says he welcomes the opposition's participation in the election in the hope of a fair and transparent poll.
Opposition candidates that register all have international, national, and electoral guarantees. What more do they want? The only guarantee I can never give you is that they beat us in presidential elections. That I cannot give.
Venezuela marked 29 years since the Caracasazo on Tuesday. It is a momentous event in the country's history, which helped pave the way for the Bolivarian Revolution. Freddie Gillingham looks back at the event and how it continues to shape the country so many years later.
The hilltop barrios of Venezuela's capital bears a story that Jose has tried to put behind him. Although hidden from view at first glance, this abandoned stairwell, known as the Stairwell of Death, evokes memories of this day back in 1989 that remains vivid as it was yesterday.
Venezuela was at the beginning of a very difficult economic crisis. They wanted to privatize every service: education, health, water, everything.
Jose was one of the lucky ones. Hundreds were massacred by state security forces throughout the country. So we're here at one of the most infamous landmarks of the Caracasazo. It was on this very stairwell which around 66 people were killed in one day. The biggest amount of casualties from that 1 week of riots in 1989. The social unrest that exploded on this day was sparked by a series of neoliberal economic reforms enforced by Venezuela's former president, Carlos Andrés Pérez. What followed was a revolt mainly seen in the poorer communities of the country. Communities who had felt ignored began to mobilize for the first time. Today, the same social forces that drove the political change which followed the Caracasazo came out in force to support their candidate. Nicolas Maduro is seeking another term as president. If he wins, he will run the country until 2025.
The youth must know and recognize the history of Venezuela. That's why we are remembering this today. We are also trying to build and strengthen a social movement, a revolution led by Nicolas Maduro.
Maduro promises to continue the Bolivarian Revolution, a revolution which, for those who are old enough to remember, was helped formed and created by them, all those years ago in 1989. Freddie Gillingham, Telesur, Caracas.
Well, time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
nada, nosotros pagamos todo, pagamos lo que es tenencia, dirección de revistas, y los taxis piratas no pagan nada.
Welcome back. President Nicolas Maduro will visit India in March. He will attend the International Solar Alliance Summit. India is one of the largest buyers of Venezuelan oil. Venezuela has been forging deeper ties with countries in Asia, Africa and Europe to counter the impact of U.S. economic sanctions. And Venezuelan Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jorge Arreaza, is doing just that in Russia. He has met with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. Arreaza tweeted that they exchanged views on the global geopolitical situation and agreed to enhance cooperation. The foreign minister says he's confident that these alliances will pay off.
But we are sure that we're going to overcome this. President Maduro is going to dedicate his next 6 years of government to stabilize and diversify the economy in Venezuela, and we will achieve alternative routes. The international financial system blocks Venezuela. Then we are working with Russia, China, and Turkey to find new mechanisms.
Another oil reserve has been discovered off the shores of Guyana. The discovery was made by ExxonMobil in the Stabroek block. This is the 7th oil deposit uncovered by the oil giant since it started drilling in 2015. These oil fields are in the disputed area claimed by neighboring Venezuela. For over a decade, Venezuela and ExxonMobil have been fighting a legal battle over compensation. That's because the oil projects are in areas expropriated by the Hugo Chavez government in 2007. Guyana is one of the most significant new areas for oil and gas discoveries in recent years. The Caribbean community CARICOM closed its summit with a pledge to create stronger ties. Leaders say this will enable them to face challenges such as global climate change, corruption, and U.S. interference. In an exclusive interview with Telesur, Ralph Gonzalez, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, discussed the region's priorities.
Strengthening trade, improving our common market, upgrading tourism, those are fundamental sectors for our societies. Besides, we should enhance security and the fight against crime.
Telesur asked the Caribbean leader about the strength of the CARICOM Union, especially after the U.S. canceled its attendance at the summit.
The truth is that most of the CARICOM nations have a good relationship with the U.S. governments. But that does not mean that we have to follow its policies. We have an independent position, and we are sovereign countries. We have our own stand regarding Cuba and Venezuela, and nothing is going to change that. We collaborate with the U.S. in many areas, like security, and we have American corporations working in our cities. So we are just good friends, but the U.S. has not a say in the Caribbean issues, nor does it regarding our relation with Cuba and Venezuela.
Gonsalves also explained the importance of CARICOM as an integration tool.
To be united makes us stronger. I think CARICOM leaders are wise, and we have a lot of experience when we talk. We listen to each other. We have our own positions, but we do not try to impose our thoughts. You can check during the discussions how important that is.
The Honduran former First Lady Rosa Elena Bonilla was arrested by members of the Technical Agency for Criminal Investigation in Tegucigalpa on corruption charges. Her husband, Porfirio Lobo, served as Honduran president from 2010 to 2014 as the Conservative National Party leader. Prosecutors say Bonilla deposited $600,000 from a state account into her personal account. She also hasn't accounted for at least $6 million in government funds for her office. And also in Honduras, 6 people were wounded in clashes between police and protesters. The demonstration took place next to the United Nations headquarters following the official visit of U.S. envoy Nikki Haley. Honduran opposition leader Salvador Nasrallah and former President Manuel Zelaya supported the rally. They say the police clampdown shows the government is oppressing the people.
They repress demonstrators like this here in front of the United Nations that represents the whole world. What can you expect they do somewhere else? I mean, they are showing their real face and saying, we repress the Honduran people when they are just asking for their basic rights.
Mr. Donald Trump needs to know what kind of government he is supporting in Honduras. Here we live under a dictatorship that is repressing the Honduran people, and we're not going to accept it.
In Argentina, the start of the school year may not happen as planned, as teachers' unions have announced a general strike for next week.
Public school teachers are preparing for a time of struggle in the form of empty classrooms in Argentina. Teachers are about to embrace a 2-day general strike beginning on Monday of next week.
We are the first ones to defend a better education for the children and young adults in Argentina, and we have shown it throughout history. We are going to continue to defend public education and education workers' rights.
As part of the measures, teachers will march and mobilize, among other protest actions. According to the educators, the adjustments that Mauricio Macri's government is making to public education are having serious consequences. It reduces teachers' wages and it's hurting students' education.
Unfortunately, Mauricio Macri's government talks about dialogue, but does the opposite. It's a democratically chosen government, but it has to be said. It's an authoritarian government, that it has taken more and more authoritarian government measures, denying party commissions. This is what the military dictatorship did, with repression and condemning the workers.
Prior to the start of school, university professors are also part of the struggle and have announced their own measures. They have rejected the government's proposal of a 9% increase. Inflation shows that prices will increase by 25%. They are calling for a salary increase of 24%.
The government clearly has a private policy on education in public schools. It's not only noticeable on the wages. We have infrastructure problems in schools, and in Buenos Aires alone, we have more than 10,000 children that are left out of public schools.
Even though the government has called to continue talks in the coming days, the teachers don't have any expectation of reaching an agreement, and there are indefinite actions planned.
The Dominican Republic is ramping up efforts to keep Haitian migrants out of the country. It is increasing its military presence along its border with the poorest nation in the hemisphere. President Danilo Medina told the Dominican Congress that an additional 900 soldiers would be sent. Haiti expects to see many of its citizens return to South America from the United States. They were granted temporary visas in the U.S., but the U.S. is now planning to end that program in 2019.
This national project consists in having proper, secure and stable borders to protect our people, to protect our patrimony, but above all, to protect our territory. We understand that to be a good neighbor, to respect each other, and even to collaborate, it is also necessary to be clear about where one house begins and the other ends.
Mexican federal police discovered 137 undocumented immigrants in a trailer in the city of Tamaulipas. The agents found 95 Hondurans, 37 Guatemalans, 4 Salvadorians and 1 Ecuadorian crowded in the vehicle. The driver of the trailer was arrested. The undocumented immigrants were turned over to the Attorney General's office. It is believed they were attempting to cross the border into the United States. The UN Deputy High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly Clements, has urged Central American governments to keep their borders open and to take responsibility for the effects of migration. Our correspondent, Gilda Silvestrucci, has more.
During her visit to Central America, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Kelly Clements, has called on 6 Central American nations to take proper measures to face forced migration, such as keeping their borders open. In Honduras, the Human Rights Commissioner said that in 2017, more than 300,000 people migrated to other countries, fleeing from gang violence. Honduras and El Salvador are 2 countries with the highest migration rates in the region, since most of the public institutions haven't taken any action against violence.
We thank Gilda Silvestrucci for that report. On Tuesday, Brazil's government officially created the Extraordinary Ministry of Public Security. But the move did not go down well with opposition parties and civil society representatives.
Raúl Jungmann, the minister of the recently created Ministry of Public Security, officiated a ceremony in the Planalto Palace, the office of the president in Brazil.
That ministry was nothing more than a measure to try to calm the people in the fight against organized crime in the country. We have a country with 61,000 murderers each year. It can be compared to the Nagasaki bombing. And we have this administrative response that without a doubt is going to cost a lot and will not have any immediate effect.
Jungmann was the Minister of Defense. He will be replaced by General Silva Luna. It will be the first time since the return of democracy that a military leader will hold this type of position.
What we are seeing now is an attempt to militarize and create politicians that could grow the credibility and popularity of the government. In my opinion, it's absurd. We're handing the reins to the military. This could be repeated in other states and could even have an impact in other countries in Latin America.
According to Sandra Carvalho, a member of the Human Rights National Council, a Ministry of Public Security and the use of the armed forces will not help in the fight against crime.
Our concern is that with the creation of this Ministry of Public Security, the Ministry of Human Rights has weakened. We believe it's the wrong thing to do.
The new Ministry of Public Security is provisional, and even though it's still waiting to be approved by the Congress, its work will extend until the end of Michel Temer's term.
In El Salvador, opposition political forces within the Legislative Assembly have long blocked social programs promoted by the leftist government.
El Salvador's Legislative Assembly is made up of 84 deputies, of which 31 are from the FMLN. The majority of the parliamentary opposition has often refused to pass laws that benefit marginalized social groups.
In this election, the FMLN intends to increase its number of deputies in order to continue consolidating social programs that we have developed for the benefit of the people, to deepen them and to prevent a regressive movement towards privatization and neoliberal policies.
Many social organizations recognize the efforts of the parliamentarians of the left in the Legislative Assembly, which have passed laws such as the prohibition of mining exploitation. They encourage new candidates to legislate on issues such as what's called the General Water Law and the Law on Food Security and Sovereignty, while recognizing advances in others promoted by the government.
We have health reforms which have reduced maternal death, infant death. We have more boys and girls who go to school, who receive school packages. Agricultural production has been improved. That is, there are a series of advances that have been recognized not only by the government, but internationally.
The parliamentary political opposition has even opposed the approval of donations from friendly countries destined to rebuild the rural road system, and for 2018 blocked the approval of the nation's general budget.
An election like this will also bear on whether or not El Salvador will have new headquarters of Ciudad Mujer. We have seen that this Ciudad Mujer program has been honored by the international community. Honduras took it and did it in Honduras, Dominicana, Mexico, different countries, Paraguay too, because it is a good program for women. In this case, there are 3 new headquarters of Ciudad Mujer that could not be built because Arena blocked that possibility with their votes.
Undoubtedly, the FMLN's efforts aim to increase the number of deputies on March 4th in order to consolidate their projects and social programs promoted by the second leftist government since 2009.
In Argentina, the Union of Sport Referees and the Executive Committee of the Association of Argentine Soccer are considering the possibility of stopping soccer games when fans sing chants that insult President Mauricio Macri. Historically, the games have been used as a platform to express the people's discomfort. It is common to hear songs about topics not directly related to soccer. Nevertheless, for the first time in Argentina's history, the soccer authorities are threatening to stop or suspend the matches. According to the union, this could be seen as discriminatory. Vintage signs in the Cuban capital of Havana are being restored. A local artist is lighting up cinemas, hotels and cabarets, which have been worn down over time. Kadir Lopez Niev's project has restored around 50 signs so far, taking dim neighborhoods from forgotten and overlooked to once again an attraction for tourists. The restorations are made using historic photographs as reference. Well, time now for another short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Afghanistan's political scenario may change drastically. For more on that and other stories, let's take a look at headlines around the world.
In a major political shift in Afghanistan, President Ashraf Ghani has offered to recognize the Taliban as a legitimate political group. He also proposed a ceasefire and the release of Taliban prisoners. This will be followed by a constitutional review and a new election where the Taliban will be allowed to participate. If the Taliban accepts the terms and peace talks get underway, we could see an end to more than 16 years of internal war.
I call on Taliban under leadership today. The decision is in your hands. Accept peace, a dignified peace. Come together to safeguard this country, which has been the result of our sacrifices and struggle.
At least 20 people have been killed in Papua New Guinea when a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit the nation. This is the strongest quake in Papua's history. The tremor, which struck the southern highlands, triggered slides, damaged power and mining infrastructure, and cut power. Authorities are trying to assess the damage, especially in the remote parts of the country. A top German court has ruled that the big cities can ban older diesel cars in their bid to combat the increasing air pollution. Environmental groups praised the ruling. However, there is concern among millions of drivers that they may not be able to use or sell their used cars. The ruling could put pressure on car manufacturers to pay for upgrading exhaust systems of new and used cars. Emissions from diesel engine cars have been in the spotlight since 2015 when Volkswagen admitted to cheating in exhaust tests.
Ecuador and the United States are forging strong ties politically and economically. They hope to extend trade ties that will be beneficial to both sides and maintain stability at their borders.
Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno welcomed the U.S. Undersecretary of State Thomas Shannon to the Carondelet government's palace. They reaffirmed existing bilateral agreements and pushed for U.S. engagement to promote a safe and democratic hemisphere.
The bilateral agreements that we are discussing are the issues of migration, human mobility, education, culture, trade, combating drugs, terrorism, and principally defense of human rights and democracy.
During a press conference, Shannon expressed the importance of maintaining security at the border. He reaffirmed their collaboration in areas of mutual interest.
I believe that as soon as we can start the meeting on investment trade again, we are on the way to a commercial agreement.
The U.S. Undersecretary also met with other Ecuadorian officials, where he discussed international issues. Shannon will continue his tour, where he will visit Colombia and Chile.
U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has seen his security clearance downgraded. Kushner will no longer be given access to top-secret government documents. The move was made by Chief of Staff John Kelly, who wants to impose stricter security measures and discipline. Kushner can no longer attend the president's daily briefings, and he will not have access to highly classified intelligence reports. It was found that many senior White House aides, including Kushner, only had temporary clearance. And the legal battle between the technology giant Microsoft and the United States could determine how data privacy will be handled in the future. Supreme Court judges have to decide if prosecutors can force technology companies to turn over data stored overseas. The case, which dates back to 2013, involves a U.S. warrant ordering Microsoft to hand over the contents of an email account which was used by a suspected drug trafficker. That data was held in a cloud in Ireland. In an initiative to prevent terror attacks in Indonesia, the government held a meeting between convicted militants and survivors of previous terror attacks. Indonesia's National Anti-Terrorism Agency organized this reconciliation meeting where 150 convicted militants met with their terror victims. The motive of the meeting is to bring awareness to the rise of extremism and militancy in the region. Hundreds of Indonesians are believed to have gone to Syria to join the Islamic State group. And that story brings us to the end of this news brief. But for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Soini Gray. Thank you so much for watching.